breaking news this hour as a federal judge in Portland has granted a restraining order blocking President Trump's call-up of the National Guard. The state attorney general wrote, "The court agreed with our position. Today's ruling is a healthy check on the president. It reaffirms what we already knew. Portland is not the president's war-torn fantasy." These are protesters today gathering outside an ICE facility there. Also today, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said that President Trump gave him an ultimatum: call up 300 Illinois National Guard members or he would do it for him. The news comes amid growing tension between Pritzker and Trump. At Hexas All Generals meeting earlier this week, Trump mocked Pritzker, calling him a stupid governor. Pritzker then had this to say about Trump.
There is something genuinely wrong with this man, and the 25th Amendment ought to be invoked.
Emma and Jason are here with us tonight. We have Emma Vigeland, Jason Selvig. So, Emma, let's start with you. What do you make of the court's ruling about Portland?
Well, it's a very exciting development, and it's long overdue here because this has been an absolutely unchecked use of presidential power for quite a while at this point. The attempt to use the National Guard to test the limits of the Constitution. Trump is clearly trying to do that. So I'm encouraged that the courts are stepping up here. But we know that the Supreme Court is where this is eventually going to have to go. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court has handed down a variety of different rulings that basically rubber stamp the Trump administration and their illegal actions, including this horrific decision that they had earlier last week or earlier this week on USAID, which said that, OK, even if Congress appropriates these funds, the president has the authority to rescind them, which is undercutting the very power of the purse and the authority that the Constitution granted to Congress. So we cannot rely on the courts solely here. The Democrats also have to stand up and show a united front. And I think Pritzker has given other Democratic governors a bit of a blueprint because of how well he has responded here.
How has that been, that response? Walk us through what has worked for him that others, well, to be fair, with the exception of Maryland, there really isn't another one that has kind of been tested in the way that J.B. Pritzker has. Gavin Newsom has. He's been effective as well. He's taken it to the courts. He's very good at the messaging right now. He is doing something I think you know very well, trolling Trump in a way that is pretty effective. And we can talk about that, whether that messaging is working or not. But what is J.B. Pritzker doing that is making him successful right now in this fight?
I guess my argument is that it's been more successful than, in my view, what Newsom has done. I'm getting a little bit tired of some of the trolling and the gaming language. I mean, how much can we appeal to, I guess, Gavin Newsom's son's favorite shows? I mean, that seems to be what drives what he's been doing on social media. What Pritzker has done has been a lot more serious, and he stood shoulder to shoulder with Brandon Johnson in anticipation of the National Guard being called, as opposed to where I felt like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom were a little bit more on their back foot.
Jason, what did you make of the scenes we watched out of Chicago this week? I mean, the video that DHS released, glamorizing it, and turning it into this basically opportunity for national propaganda.
Yeah.
But the scenes and the testimony out of Chicago have horrified basically everyone that we have spoken to.
Yeah.
What do you make of the point that we've reached?
Well, I think it's sad where we are right now. And not only the scene there, the raids that happened, the military-style raids that happened on, U.S. citizens as well, who are being taken out, children taken out in the middle of the night, separated from their parents in the middle of the night. I can't imagine the trauma that they experienced there, but also on the ground at some of these protests where the media has been targeted. With, I believe there was a CBS reporter, a local CBS reporter in Chicago said because of the pepper spray, a pepper bomb, I think it was, that she was throwing up for hours. And I think a reverend there was praying and was shot with pepper bullets, I think 5 or 6 pepper bullets. So it's a really scary time. And I think it's an important time to remember, protest is patriotism. You need to speak up and talk now and talk about what's happening here and make your voices heard, because it's really, really scary when you see scenes like this.
I don't think we can do justice almost to how horrible it was the other night. I just want to go back to Governor Pritzker's statement. He had a statement just about children And he said, following widespread reports of children being zip-tied, separated from their parents, and detained for several hours at an apartment building in South Shore of Chicago. That is insane. And this is happening in the middle of the night. Some of the reports said that the children were unclothed. How is this happening? And how can Donald Trump think that there's any electoral benefit to this whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, the Chicago Sun-Times did excellent reporting and said that some of the children were naked in the streets.
Joyce, is this battle headed to the courts? Does the president or the Department of Defense have constitutional authority to do this?
So this will land in the courts very quickly, just like last week, Portland, Oregon went to court, and other cities where this has happened, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., are already in court. You know, the landscape has now become very familiar. There's a federal law, the Posse Comitatus Act, that prohibits the military from participating in federal law enforcement of U.S. criminal law against people in this country. And so typically we only see National Guard troops federalized when the governor actually requests that the president do that to help with an issue. For instance, protests in Los Angeles during the Rodney King situation. That's an example where federal troops, or rather where National Guard troops were federalized. It's extremely unusual, almost limited to this president, to see that happening when a governor says, no, we're good. We've got our law enforcement situation under control.
We have already seen late-night raids in Chicago. Agents have been dressed up in camouflage. They've been pointing long guns at residents of an apartment building. Does ICE have legal authority to do that, Joyce?
So ICE's situation is different. They actually are federal law enforcement. They have a law enforcement mission. But of course, they're constrained, for instance, by laws that prohibit the use of excessive force. They're constrained by their own internal policies. They can't go about arresting whoever they want to. They've got to have probable cause in order to make an arrest. Typically, agents would consult with prosecutors and would be getting an arrest warrant before something like that took place. So a lot of what we're seeing is a federal agency that now has supervision, that has leadership, that's encouraging it to push, if not break, the bounds of federal law enforcement's mission.
But at what point does constitutional authority end and states' rights begin when both the mayor and the governor say no thanks?
Right. So, you know, with federal law enforcement, that's less of an issue because there's parallel law enforcement duties. So, for instance, when I was a U.S. attorney, federal agents worked seamlessly and side by side with our state and local counterparts. They have separate but parallel missions. But when you're talking about bringing the National Guard in against the governor's wishes, that's a very different environment. And
to fight terrorism around the globe, to protect our way of existence, turning neighbors on their own neighbors is not only unconstitutional, it is reprehensible. And so what I'm going to do is what I've been doing. I'm going to use every single tool that is available to me to protect working people in this city, to ensure that our fundamental rights are protected, to make sure that people know their rights, and then to ensure that we're actually investing in people so that they can live healthy and vibrant lives. That's what the people of Chicago ask of me every single day. No one has ever asked me to go to the White House and to express a desire for the military to occupy cities. No one has ever raised that. And so what they have asked for is to make sure that this president is not cutting food and medicine and housing. What? I'm sorry, what's that?
Have you approached the White House for a meeting?
Well, here's what we've made very clear to the White House. Invest in violence prevention. They took over $800 million away from violence prevention programs. They cut the ATF budget by 30%. Just a few months ago, working with my local police department, we took over 170 high-powered weapons off the streets of Chicago. Well, this administration cut over 1,400 of those ATF positions. We said, make sure that we are funding our education system. Look, if you
in a dramatic turn of events, a federal judge in Portland has issued a restraining order halting President Trump's controversial move to deploy the National Guard. The ruling, hailed by Oregon's Attorney General as a healthy check on the president, underscores a growing legal and moral standoff between state leaders and the federal government. Across the nation, the tension is palpable. In Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker claims Trump gave him an ultimatum: mobilize 300 National Guard troops or the White House would do it for him. The clash has escalated beyond politics into a constitutional crisis, raising urgent questions about the limits of presidential power and the sanctity of state sovereignty. On the streets, the human toll is undeniable. Disturbing scenes from Chicago show nighttime raids, children separated from parents, and citizens zip-tied outside their homes. Reporters and clergy alike have been targeted with pepper spray and projectiles, while federal agencies, emboldened and unrestrained, appear to push the boundaries of lawful authority. Legal experts warn that such actions defy the Posse Comitatus Act, a cornerstone of American democracy that bars military involvement in domestic law enforcement without state consent. Yet here we are, governors refusing federal troops, courts intervening, and a nation wrestling with the very meaning of federalism. Chicago's mayor vows to fight back, accusing the administration of cutting funds for housing, education, and violence prevention while spending billions to militarize American cities. This president has declared war on poor people, he says, calling on citizens to rise up and reclaim their democracy. Tonight, America stands at a crossroads between law and power, protest and order, freedom and fear. The next chapter will not be written in Washington, but in the streets, the courts, and the voices of the people themselves.